Welcome to the first talk slot of our Bridlington Eco Festival event. We recognise that there is a climate and ecological crisis. We recognise that there are significant troubles in our world, and we recognise that one of the best ways that we can deal with any of these things is by working together. I'm going to step down now as I welcome up our first speaker for the day, who is Jenny Brown. We've given her the challenging task of capturing for us in just 10 minutes what the nub of the climate and ecological crisis is. This section of talks we're calling "What is the problem and why should I care?" Jenny Brown grew up in Bridlington and now works as a Senior Church Advocacy Advisor for Christian Aid, with a focus currently on the global climate crisis. Jenny, would you like to come, and shall we give Jenny a round of applause as she comes to the stage?
Thank you, Ollie, and no pressure, obviously. It's always very exciting and nice to have the excuse to come back to Brid. Beside the sea is actually a really good place to have an eco summit. We all know how much the weather matters when we're on a seaside holiday, and often from very unhappy personal experience. And it's really hard to pack when you don't know whether to take flip-flops or wellies. In the big scheme of things, that's a nuisance, but we have to call it a first world problem. Climate change, the climate crisis, is a global problem, and it's the most serious one that the world has to face. And Christian Aid knows this from our own experience of working in 29 countries around the world. And we see every day the effects of the climate crisis on some of the world's poorest communities. And we know that it's urgent. And if we don't act now, if the world doesn't act now, it's going to be too late to turn the climate crisis around. So, with that as the context, it is so good that this Eco Summit is happening, and it's happening exactly 6 weeks before the beginning of the big UN summit in Glasgow, where the world's leaders will come together to try to agree a serious plan of action to turn the climate crisis around. And this Eco Summit is important in that context because it's a sign that there are a lot of people who are already really concerned about the climate crisis, and are not only concerned but are doing something about it and want to do more. So my job, as Ollie indicated, bracket, no pressure, close bracket, is to talk about the big global picture and to suggest ways in which the more local action can be connected in so that together we can make an even bigger difference. Climate change is an environmental issue. What happens to the environment inevitably affects everyone, everywhere in the world. So it's also a human issue. And at its heart, it's a massive issue of injustice. The crisis is caused historically by the lifestyles, by the economic activity of the rich countries in the world, which includes our own. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've got rich using fossil fuels, coal, gas, oil, responsible for the vast majority of the carbon emissions which are causing the world's temperature to rise. In other words, global warming, though I think it's better to call it global heating because that's much less comfortable. And it's an issue of justice or injustice because it's the world's poorest people in the world's poorest countries who are actually being really hammered by the climate crisis by global heating, even though it's us in the rich countries, our economic policies, our lifestyles, which are actually causing the temperature to rise. And it's not fair. Looking at the countries in this list, you've got 10 of the poorest countries in the world. Together, they're only contributing less than 1% of current carbon emissions. But they're the ones who are being hit hardest by the impact. The crisis is not just an issue, however, for people out there. Again, with the seaside theme, I took this photo yesterday morning, and Flamborough Head, beautiful sunshine, sea, absolutely tranquil, picture postcard view. And you think, what could the sea possibly do? What's the problem with that? But even now, even not far along the coast from here, we've got a problem of coastal erosion. That is going to get a lot worse as sea levels rise and as storms become more severe. And in this country, coastal erosion is bad. It causes damage, destruction, occasionally loss of life even. But in this country, we have the resources to keep the damage to a minimum. But it's not like that in Bangladesh, if you live near the sea there. The ocean warms, the sea levels rise, cyclones happen more often and are more severe. You lose your home. You can't grow the rice that you need in order to feed your family because the water has gone salty. And you're stuck in a situation that is not of your making, and there's not much help available. And that's where we see the injustice. And then this is another photograph that I took on the way up here on Thursday of the Wolds. Beautiful, beautiful part of the country, very productive farmland. As someone from Bridlington, I would say some of the best farmland in the country. And farmers are having to deal with changing climate, even in this part of this country, with more severe storms, more risk of flooding, and longer periods without rain. And that's the sign of the changing climate, and it's becoming a problem even here. But it's even more of a problem for the women farmers that I met when I was in Kenya a little while ago. In the past, they've been able to grow the food they need to feed their families, and they've been able to do that because they could predict when the rains would happen, when to plant, when to harvest, and it was all very straightforward, as straightforward as that kind of lifestyle can be. But when I met them, they were really struggling because they were no longer able to tell when the rains were going to happen. And so they were really having to guess. And guesswork is absolutely no good if you have a family to feed. But that's what climate change is doing to millions of families around the world. And it's because of the political decisions, the economic decisions, and the lifestyles of people in rich countries. And everywhere we look in the world, there's more extreme weather. And even just in the last year, we've seen unprecedented floods in Belgium and Germany. We've had wildfires in Turkey, life-threatening heat waves in the United States and Canada, as well as unusually destructive cyclones in India, Bangladesh, and hurricanes in Central America. And often we hear them referred to as one-in-a-century events, but they're not. We can tell that, they're coming too frequently to be one-offs. And the list can go on. But the results wherever we're talking about, are catastrophic for the world's poorest countries and the most marginalized people in those countries. And that's especially women and especially people of color. And the injustice is as extreme as the weather. And that's why Christian Aid and millions of people around the world are campaigning for climate justice. And that's why the UN summit in Glasgow, which you might have heard called the COP, which is happening 6 weeks today, is so incredibly important. And it's the one opportunity the world's leaders have to get together to agree on a really serious plan, commitment to turn global heating around before it's too late. And then they have to do what they promised to do. And it's also why this Eco Summit and what you're already doing is so important. And I'm really excited about today because you've got an amazing range of speakers, you've got some fantastic displays in the exhibition area, and we're going to be hearing about the difference that you're all making already. The challenge is that there's so little time left before global heating gets completely out of control, before it's too late. So rapid, radical changes need to be made at global level as well as local and area level. And that is what has to happen in Glasgow. And in order for that to happen, our politicians need to know that that is the right thing to do. And that's where you come in, all of us come in, because what you are doing here, often at great personal cost, with huge effort, huge commitment, that gives you the credibility to go to the politicians and to say, this matters to us, so it has to matter to you. They have to take you seriously. It gives you a lot of credibility. And so what we're doing at Christian Aid with many other organizations is lobbying and campaigning to persuade our government to take a lead in Glasgow and show it's really serious about this. And all of you can join in that. And if you want to come to the exhibition centre afterwards, my colleague Sarah Jane and I can talk through some of the ways you can do that. And there's a petition to the Prime Minister, you can email your MP, you can even make a paper vote, and there are loads of other things, so come and have a chat. Climate crisis is becoming an emergency even in this country. It's already a catastrophe for millions of people around the world. And thank you for what you are already doing. And now is your chance to get our government to do what they have to do.
Thank you, Jenny, so much.